all your school rugby, all in one place. This is Next Gen 15.
Hello, welcome back to the Next Gen 15 podcast. We've got a new guest today, Wilf Kemsley, because it's a bit of a special edition. We are doing under 18 Six Nations, I should say, under 18 Six Nations, teams of the tournament, a women's team and a men's team. How are you doing, Wilf?
Hi, Angus. Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a few DMs in the old Next Gen 15 Instagram account asking when we're going to publish our full team of the tournament, and it was just a case of getting us both in a room to go through it because we've all taken in the tournament. It was a great tournament as well, really well organised. To be fair,
It was an interesting tournament, wasn't it? I mean, having Spain in there, obviously Georgia their second year, just really mixed things up on the men's front, and then obviously the women's tournament with its sort of slightly different structure where everyone actually got the chance to play everyone. Sort of two fairly cool, two fairly cool competitions.
yeah, the women set up with their first two rounds playing a couple of 35-minute matches each. Really made it quite difficult to pick a team because of the number of players that were on show.
Yeah,
What it did do was it made it very clear who the sort of linchpins of each side were, because those who played the full 70 across the two teams were clearly people to watch out for. And in the men's game as well, yeah, like Spain played exceptionally well. Georgia have sort of been making waves at youth level for a while. It was Portugal last year who turned up for the men's under 18 Six Nations and did okay, but Spain made it to the final of the under 18 Euros, just losing to that Georgia team. So they earned their spot and well, they did amazingly well, even pulling off some really big like shock results in that closing round. So yeah, it was great to see sort of a level of rugby that we don't always get to see over at Next Gen 15. Of course, we are quite Anglican focused. We don't always get to see the action from France and Georgia and Spain. But yeah, it was really great to see that amount of talent on show, and it makes you feel, quite excited for how the Six Nations and international rugby is going to go in the next 10 years or so. How long can we wait until someone like Georgia or someone like Spain gets a spot?
yeah. Although, tell you what, as a Scot, I was absolutely gutted with what what happened in the end. Spain
Yeah.
getting the win against Scotland. I mean, fair play to them. They were absolutely brilliant. Although we did see potentially they tried the tournament from Rory McAfee for Scotland in that game. Right, let's get into it. Should we start with the women? Um, what do you want to do? Do you want to start in the forwards or start in the backs?
I think the forwards will kick it off with because yeah, in the women's game, it's still a very young game, is was said over the weekend of the actual women's Six Nations. They were talking about how quickly women's rugby developed. But I think
Mm,
in the full pack, you still get standouts in terms
big
of
time.
physicality that really do control the game. And that's true at under 18 level in men's and in women's. But I think in women's game, it did stand out over this tournament. There were a couple of sort of forwards where you're like, gosh, you could make a whole pack of just front rows from England and Ireland, and they would be really, really handy across the whole tournament.
Oh,
Um,
you say that, and I agree with you. I mean, some of them were just astonishing in terms of that physicality. And let's actually start on that front row. And the reason I say you say that is because watching the Wales Ireland game at the end of the Six Nations, the Welsh front row, particularly Crystal James and Talfa Tuipulotu, wow, so much power, so much physicality. I think Crystal James scored a couple of tries in that game. Tuipulotu was, to be honest, a carbon copy of anyone else that's ever had the surname Tuipulotu. Just absolutely bruising. I mean, they were just extraordinary. I mean, so well, let's start in your area of expertise, Wilf. Let's start in the front row. Let's go loose head number one. Who's your pick for the team tournament?
so it's kind of difficult because I'm more interested in making this front row fair because you could pick all of Ireland's front row, you could pick all of Wales's front row, or you could pick all of England's front row. And I think it's probably diplomatic to take one from each. And that narrows it down, thankfully, because otherwise it'd be really difficult to pick a front row at all. Um, so the loose heads are Ireland's McLean was very impressive throughout the entire tournament. Um, she was a huge part of the sort of physical edge for Ireland because they didn't have the tournament they maybe wanted across the whole thing, but they were really impressive, and McLean was a real leader for them and really impressive. And then England's Jar was
Mhm.
really strong as well. But I want to save England's spot for tight head. Um, so I think I'd probably
Well,
put
I'll tell you what
McLean.
then. Sorry, just before you pick it, why don't you tell me your full front row? If you're going to split your nations, because I've got what I've got in my front row. It's a little bit butchered, but they did mix up where they played slightly. But I've got two
Oh, they
Wales and
did.
I've two Wales and an Ireland. So let's hear your full front row,
Ah,
and then
okay,
we'll
okay.
go from there.
So Talvatu Pelotu is
Yeah.
at hook. Cara McLean is at loose head, and then I've put Izzy van der Straten at tight head from England.
Okay. Interesting. So what I've got is I think in the third game, Cara McLean spent some of it at tight head. So what
Sure.
I've gone with is Crystal James at loose head,
Mm,
Tuipulotu at hooker, and McLean at tight head. But what we've definitely both got is McLean and Tuipulotu. So they're in.
absolutely. Yeah,
And
McLean was like there were a lot of really strong physical characters, across the competition. But McLean was sort of a step above,
yeah, she was brilliant. She was
and
brilliant.
across more than just one round as well, which is quite difficult.
Yeah,
Um,
particularly with those 35-minute games, it's so hard to make a really big impression in them.
yeah,
Okay, then. So we've got to decide between James and Van der Straten. I'll tell you what, I will cede to your expertise in the area, and we will go Van der Straten of England. So that we're very even start here with England, Ireland, and Wales all having a player in. I suspect though it's going to at some point stop evening up because for
yeah,
anyone that didn't catch it, France were unbelievable. Second
absolutely.
rows, I'm going to make the case here for an all Ireland second row. So Olivia McKinley in game three was near enough unplayable. She was playing like a back row forward, but was tall, so she was in the second row and she was doing everything. And then Diana Izakour made your team of the round twice, first two rounds. So clearly impressed you in the first two rounds. So
Yeah,
I'm making the case for a full Ireland second row, but I'll let's hear what you've got.
Diane Easycall was one of the only players that made the team twice. Because I really didn't want to pick her twice in a row, but she kept turning up in really important moments and scoring. Scored in every match day, which for a second row is pretty rare. I know that again the physicality of the game is so important, but Easycall was pretty much everywhere for Ireland. She is really impressive. And yeah, I think that's one of the most comfortable because Tuipulotu was fantastic for Wales at hooker, but like
Yeah.
so was Belmont at France, and so was Jones, the England captain. So there's a bit of a debate there. But with Isaac, like just the most nailed on
Yeah.
person in the
All
team,
right.
probably.
Isakour's in.
And then yeah, the other second row, there's a few other candidates to sort of be spoken about. I think that Wales had quite a few really talented second rows, and Tasmin Baines at England did a really good job as well throughout the tournament. But yeah, you can't also yeah, like the whole Wales second row as well. You could argue deserve a spot in the team, but I think based on sort of results, Ireland were really impressive throughout the tournament, and we've got to include a fair few of them in here. So I'm happy to concede McKinley as well because
Oh,
did
fair
I'm very
enough.
close to making the team of the week in round one, especially as well.
Fair enough. Right. An all Ireland second row, Isakour and McKinley. I tell you what, Ireland are off to an absolute rocket here. Four out of six positions go to Ireland. I suspect that's going to mix up in the back row though, because I think this is where the France onslaught starts to arrive. Because I mean, for anyone that missed it, France were they were so good, weren't they, Wilf? They were almost unplayable at times.
France were fantastic, and it was their sort of these long flowing team tries they scored a couple of times. So you'd think we'd only be touching on their back line, but their back row were a big part of their moves out in the wider channels. The French were so free with their number eight especially, and their back row were always involved in the sort of backs moves. They found a way for them to get ball in hand because they were so skillful. They weren't sort of the largest back row in the tournament. Again, Wales and England, for example, had absolutely huge units at number eight, were really handy operators. But the back row for France, they really were the bridge between the pack and the back line, which is sort of a more traditional interpretation of a seven and an eight. But it was so devastating. They scored so many points,
Oh,
and
it's just incredible. So what have you? Do we want to break this down by position? Probably not, because we may mix things up a bit, mightn't we? What's your trio in the back row?
So I'm actually going to put a Scot into the back row, which is
Fantastic.
great news. It was hang on, let me just find up my team sheet because obviously I'm scrolling through about a million different notes.
I've been there.
Scarlett Down from Scotland
Yeah.
made it team of the round on round two, and Scotland didn't have a great final game, but Down still got on the score sheet. And there were some lovely scenes in the game with when Scotland, played that second round when they beat England, which was such a crazy result. Right after the final whistle, when all the players ran on to kind of celebrate, a lot of them went straight to Scarlett Down and sort of lifted her up in the air with a few hugs because she was such an important part of that back line. And then even in defeat on the final game of the round, getting a try against Italy, the only score of the game for Scotland, it's a bit of a testament to her sort of work rate and how she was always popping up in the right places. And I think she'll just about sneak in because it's going to be very French for the rest
Yeah,
of
I'm
it.
happy with that. Scarlett down at six. Six felt like the position that was open as well. So I think if we're sort of finding a player to slot in there, I'm good with down on the blind side.
Seven is less open.
So I mean, seven's a one woman show, isn't it?
Going to be Anne-Marie Sock.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
what a player!
Yeah.
Just so much involvement in absolutely everything. I mean, she's got full international caps coming her way before too long, I suspect.
Yeah, plenty of scores as well, which was pretty impressive. I know she scored against England, but she was also a huge part of France's tournament throughout. She played both of the games on match day two as well, which says a lot about how she is to the French side. But yeah, scored twice against England in the end as well, and was just a really handy operator. And it was tough to stand out in that French team because there were so many top players. But yeah, she was certainly part of that group that made a real difference early on for France. In all of their games, they kind of had to work really hard in the first 10, 15 minutes or so before they kind of ran away with things. And I think that in a French team where I'm not sure how well they expected to do in the tournament, it kind of seemed in the run up that they were going to dominate a lot of their games. So when you don't immediately do that, it can be quite difficult. I mean, obviously in their final round, that wasn't the case.
Particularly at that age as well, things can get away from you pretty easily if the confidence starts to go. But they worked well through it, and then as you say in that last game, they were just unbelievable. 8, I've got Alana Treguet at 8. Now there was a bit of confusion, I think, over the French team sheets because I, like you, thought that Lilou Pedusor was at 8 until I did a bit of deep digging, and it looks like she was actually at 9, which means that they were just writing their team sheets weirdly. So I've got Alana Treguet at 8, but
I think there are a couple of options at number 8 as well because Kiara Pearce for Wales had a really great round in
yeah,
the round, and England had a really talented operator at number 8, so good that I actually shifted her into the 7 shirt in that first week, Daisy Muscelier.
yeah,
But throughout the competition, it was France who operated really impressively for number 8, as they did in the men's team as well. I think they might have a shout there too. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I think that Miskelia was really good across all 3 match days as well. She was really important for England.
Mhm.
But does it come down to results? And is that going to sort of shift Treguet into the team? Because France did beat them quite convincingly in the end.
Yeah, I agree with you. Mascalia was excellent. I just, I don't think we can come away from this pack having only one French player in it.
Yeah,
I
she
don't-
literally scored a hat trick against England. I mean, that's sort
yeah,
of, I think that might clinch.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've got to put Treguet in. I just think we've got to have because we've got 3 Irish players in the pack. We've got to have a couple of French. Although when we get into the back line, uh, it's going to be interesting trying to keep French players out of it.
Yeah.
So that's the pack: McLean, Tuipulotu, Van der Straten, Isaacor, McKinley, Down, Sock, Treguet. 2 French players, a Scot, 3 Irish, an English, and a Welsh. The back line. Where do you not have a French player?
I do not have a French player on one wing and at one centre, and I'm trying to debate fly half.
Okay, interesting. I'm the same as you.
Okay.
Uh, let's start at the halfbacks then. I've got Pedisor at 9. I thought against England she played like Dupont, to be honest. I thought her ability in close traffic just unbelievable. She was getting ball away where I'm going. You're tangled up. You're tied up. There's no way. You've made a bad decision. Basically, you're running into heavy traffic and you're gonna get absolutely nobbled. And she'd get the ball away and France would be off in space and 50 yards down the field. It was so cool to watch. And then at 10, I've got Chloe Vile, who again, I'm leaning so heavily on this England game, but when a 9 is playing so well inside you, I always think it's really hard for a 10 to look brilliant because they don't really have to do much because the 9's running the show. We quite often see it with Intermac outside of Dupont, where quite often Intermac looks like he's having a quiet game, but it's because Dupont's run the show. Somehow, despite the magic going on at 9, she was still playing brilliantly at 10. So I've gone, leaning heavily on that England result, but I've gone with the French halfbacks from that England game.
No, I think it says a lot about Lily Pedisol that I actually didn't clock that she was the number 9. From again, obviously, we can only go off the team sheets that we're given, but I did watch that entire game, and at no point, and I was like, oh gosh, she's working so hard to get to the breakdown of the back row. That's pretty impressive. But because her carrying around the breakdown was as good as it was in the England game in the opening rounds as well. She was really impressive. She's just making line break after line break, and it really opened up the game, which is what you want as a French side. So I'm really happy to leave Pedersen in at scrum half. I think she's earned that quite convincingly. However, at 10, there's 2 other candidates for me in terms of fly half. One of them is Scotland's Poppy Mellenby,
Yeah.
who in again a tough competition for Scotland, especially in the opening round. She played both games, and she was there. It's harsh, kind of only bright spark in some of those games. Like there
Yeah.
was very little going Scotland's way, which was sort of a tale of the tournament for the men's and the women's team. But she was really impressive. However, I put Lavinia Praticetti from Italy above both of them. Again, another player who really starred for Italy against Scotland, but also made the team around in round 2 because she played both games and was really impressive. Italy got some really good results. A draw with Wales was impressive, but when they lost to France, they've held France like no one else in the tournament.
Yeah, they were closer to them than anyone else, weren't they? Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, she was a huge part of that. I think that there are 2 Italians in this back line for me, and Lavinia Praticetti is one of them that has to go in. I think she was fantastic. I think she was one of the best players Italy had. And she was also a bit of a menace in defence as well.
Yeah. She was standout. She was standout.
And it's really
We've
But
lost Wilf temporarily. Oh, he's back. He's back. Okay, so we've got Pedersor at 9. Are we sold on that?
I will, yeah, I'll give you Pediso at 9. I think that she's an all-round player, but as a
And
scrum half, as
then,
you said,
so if you're giving
on
me
it.
that, I guess I've got to give you Praticetti, haven't I? I mean, she's brilliant, so I'm hardly conceding much. But yeah, Praticetti in at 10.
Oh yeah, a really brave defender, a bit Andy Farrell-esque, to be fair.
I like
Sort of
it.
the way he plays.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, we're not too France dominant at the moment. Centres. Let's go centres. Um, there's one player that is just a walk-in. The only debate is maybe she walks in at fullback because she played fullback in the last game despite wearing the 13 shirt. But one way or
Yes,
another, she's in this team.
you are
Which,
talking about Sherazad Saiki.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
geez,
yeah.
player of the tournament, I think.
I think probably quite a comfortable player of the tournament now as well, which is really strange. I put, we'll talk about player of the tournament, I'm sure, later on. But I'd give it the armband in this team. I think that Issaquah was pretty up there, as was an Irish player I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But yeah, she's played 15 in the first game and then moved into the centre for the second game in round one, and then did the same thing in round two. Basically, whenever they thought they were going to have their toughest game, they'd stick her into the centres. And she just had this uncanny ability of turning up to score at every opportunity. She was always running a line 5 yards out, was on the end of a move. And that's not really a mistake. Like, she just always turned up in the perfect place. I think she would probably end up being one of the top scorers in the competition,
Oh,
which
she
is
must have been, yeah.
remarkable when you consider that she was playing in the centres, and fullbacks for the French don't always end up on those outside channels. She was really a playmaker for them. But yeah, she was huge in defence as well. She's really physical,
Oh, she's brilliant.
really, and I think she's pretty nailed on to make the team.
So, I mean, the only debate we have with her is she playing 13 or is she playing 15? So, I suppose the best way of working out the answer to that debate is who are who's your other centre and who's your potential fullback, and let's see where we land in terms of where she might best fit.
So my other centre is one of the only players that made it into the team twice for me, and she also scored the opener for Italy in their final game. It's Christine Camilla Kone.
Yeah,
Christine Kone was really bright for Italy. I think that she did sort of play as a 13 a lot of the time, but I think you kind of can't kick out Saiki from where she wants to play. But yeah, she's good at like a quick tap and go against Scotland to open things up. It was like one of the only tries of the first half. So really impressive. And then again, she played a lot of rugby for Italy in the opening two rounds. She was part of that team that lost to England and Ireland on day one, but was like really impressive. Still managed to make the team despite losing both those games. And then obviously that draw against Italy, she was defending really bravely. Was sort of the standout spot for her in that first game. She was just everywhere in defence against a really physical Wales side. And then in the final game of the round, we got to see her over the try line a few times as well,
yeah,
which is yeah, she's just a really impressive player. I think that this Italian back line were great.
yeah.
Uh,
They were good. They were really good. Who? So Kone and Psyche are your two centres. So who have you got a fullback?
Fullback's a little bit more difficult, I think, because it was one of the most like inconsistent teams in the competition. Not in
Yeah,
the way that people were playing badly there, in the way they kept moving people around, um, to the point where I couldn't really figure out who was an actual regulation fullback.
yeah,
Um, which might make it easier to put say Iki in there, but that feels like a bit of a cop out. France did Martina Marini was a pretty talented player for
yeah.
Italy. Made it into my team of the round two, but Jade Guindé as well for France. I'm fairly certain was playing at fullback. She was really impressive. Um, but it was a position that I sort of slightly struggled to pin down in a way. I think that there are a couple of talented fullbacks in the Welsh side as well that could have a shout out. I think Beatrice Morgan was pretty good. Megan Jones was pretty good. They kind of moved across the back three throughout the tournament as well. But yeah, interested to hear your thoughts on that one, Angus.
Well, I am tempted to move her to fullback. And the reason I'm tempted is because in that game against England, I thought that Valence, who was she was wearing 20 odd, but was playing at 13, I thought was exceptional. So I am tempted to balance out the centres a little bit and move Psyche to fullback. Because as you say, fullback, there wasn't a lot of consistency of selection at fullback. I don't necessarily think anyone massively stood out. I mean, there were good performances, but I don't think anyone walked away from that with me going, that's the best fullback I've seen all tournament. And then if sort of I'd look in at the centres, who else impressed me? Blaskovic of Italy impressed me. Again, I don't think the centres had massive depth either. I think the nature of the game's been quite short. We had a couple of 0-0 draws as well. And then in the final round of games, slightly one-sided game in terms of the France-England game. There weren't that many games that gave backlines a huge amount of opportunity to flourish, other than the French backline, obviously. So I think we're a little bit, in a funny way, I think we're a little bit short of options. I'm very happy to ink in Kone at 12, I think, from Italy. And then it's just that decision. Are we going... Well, who else is on your centres sort of probables/possibles list?
So Sienna McCormack for Wales was pretty impressive, and she moved between 12 and 13, but she was sort of ever present in the centres throughout the competition, and I think she was a really impressive player. Isla McCullen as well for Wales had some really nice moments. In the England centres, I mean, Summer Charlesworth was pretty excellent throughout the competition. She's made her debut in this competition and was really impressive. But yeah, again, there were some really outstanding French candidates as well, who slotted in throughout the competition. But again, it's a difficult one because again, in short games, lots of 0-0s, way more than I expected, I assume, going into the competition, and a lot of draws generally. Even on the final match, they had another draw between Wales and Ireland. So.
Really tight games. Okay, so give me your first choice: 12, 13, 15.
Kone at 13, because that is more true to her position on the pitch. Saiki can slot in at fullback. And then, gosh, I'm really stuck on a 12 position.
Well, who would you have at fullback if you didn't have Saiki?
No, I think that's the right shout. I think Saiki does fit in there. I'm just debating if sort of Wales did enough in the competition overall to get another player in the back line, because they did have some really big results. And they were really impressive throughout. But I did sort of lean on their pack a fair bit when making those selections. There's also Scotland's number 12 as well. Waters had a really great game in round 2, but again, Scotland didn't get the run of the things in the final round, so it's pretty tough. And with that in mind, I wouldn't mind putting another French player in the centres if you think that they need that spot.
Well, I was just so impressed with Valence in that third game. But again, number on the shirt, you can tell she's not first choice for France. But big performance is a big performance. I'll tell you what, let's put a pin in the centres. Let's pick our wings, and then we'll work back from there. Who have you got on the wings?
So Ireland's Cahill
Yeah.
was unbelievable in the opening round of fixtures. Like game 1, she was absolutely outstanding. Game 2, Ireland struggled a lot at times. At round 2, sorry. Cahill still played both of them. But the closest that Ireland came to breaking out in a few of those games was through Cahill. She's absolutely rapid, Rebecca Cahill. And then she also scored the sort of equalising try in the third round against Wales. I don't really think she could have done much more throughout the tournament to earn a spot, and she's a player of the tournament nomination for me. So I
Fair
think
enough.
Rebecca Cahill at 14 has to.
Cahill, and then who's your other?
Well, Harris at England had a really good tournament. I think that England, again, it wasn't the day for them. Round one, the winger that really caught my eye more so than sort of anyone else was Fiorese from France.
Yeah.
But then, she didn't have she had an unbelievable round one. But then slightly slowed down the scoring in the second round, but was still really impressive. And also in the third round, this French team were absolutely nuts. So they went all the way, and you could pick anyone in the back line, as we're struggling not to do at the moment. But yeah, Fiorese was really impressive at 11, and I'd struggle not to put her into the team.
Okay, well, I think that might bring us to a bit of a solution then, because I agree with you. Fiorese was brilliant, particularly early on in the tournament. Cahill was outstanding, and I thought the Rondo of France was astonishing at times.
Mm.
So, with that in mind, why don't we put Psyche in the centres and then work out which of Rondo, Cahill, and Fiorese is most suited to moving from the wing to fullback?
I think Cahill and Fiorese pretty out and out wingers in terms of how they play, and I didn't see any of them shift off the wing throughout. But yeah, Leona Rondo could probably do a job at fullback. Do you reckon?
I mean, in the interests of getting a team on paper, let's go for it. Right, Kone's playing 12, Psyche's playing 13, which she'll like. Let's get her hands on the ball. Fiorese at 11, Cahill 14, and unless we've got anyone else jumping off the page, Rondo at fullback, because she did score. I mean, she was scoring tries by the minute towards the end of the England game. Just every time she touched the ball, it was a score. Now, sometimes on the wing, that's just a feature of where you're playing, but some of them took some serious finishing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that again, fullback was a position where they rotated a lot. That sort of, as you can tell through this team, the fact that we had those 35-minute games in the first round, that made it more difficult to select people because people were just moving around depending on where they would fit in at the right time. So yeah, I think we have managed just about to get a pretty strong team
I
on
think
paper.
so. And I think I'm just totting up how many we've got from each. I think it's relatively reflective of the tournament, if I'm honest, because we end up with one each from England, Scotland, and Wales, who probably were the three teams that were at the bottom half of that table. Scotland were definitely sort of the side that struggled the most despite victory over England. The fact that it's despite victory over England shows you that England really struggled. Wales were good, but probably didn't quite get the results that being good deserved. And then we've got, what have we got? Two Italians in the team, which again probably fair. They were probably around about the same as Wales, England, kind of in that zone. And then we've got 4 Irish in the team, which is reflective. They were second best team in the tournament by my judgment. And then 6 French players, most dominant side in the tournament, most dominant side in the team.
Yeah, they could also had a couple more in there. They
Oh
could
yeah,
have.
I mean you could go 15 players from France, couldn't you, if you
Yeah.
wanted? They were ridiculous.
That is on paper a seriously good rugby team as well. That is
Seriously good side, isn't
a
it?
really impressive team.
Right, just to run through it then. For the women's team of the tournament for the Under-18 Six Nations Festival from Next Gen 15 at the very least, this is far from official. We have in the front row McLean of Ireland, Tuaplotu of Wales, Van der Straten of England. In the second row, all Irish, Isahor and McKinley. Back row, Scotland's down on the blind side, Sock of France on the open side, and Treguet or Tregu rather, of France at 8. Backline, half-backs, Pessoa at 9, Praticetti of Italy at 10. Centres of Kone and Sacchi, another Italian-French combination. Fioresi of France on one wing, Cahill of Ireland, the only non-French or Italian player in the backline, and Rondo of France at fullback. That is the women's under-18 Six Nations team of the tournament. Right, on to the men's team, which is going to be even harder because we've got 8 teams to choose from. So things get even more tough. We may as well do the same as we did in the women's and start in the pack. Start with the area of expertise. Let's get into it. What have you gone with? What have you gone with at hooker?
Hooker's a tough one. There's loads of players in there who are great. For me, it was one of the hardest choices in the second round, especially because you had England's Gorlecki, who's played a lot at front row either side for Quins this season, play at hooker at time for England as well. Utterson from Scotland, who had been, I think he got selected for the under 20 squad for Scotland just after this tournament, which is remarkable for an under 18. He was really good throughout the whole tournament for Scotland, even if Scotland did not have their best tournament. Utterson was pretty great. Fitzpatrick of Ireland was excellent. But De Rossi of Italy in that opening round was a bit of a monster. And then scored early against Wales in the last round as well in that unbelievable 41-39 fixture.
That game was nuts, wasn't it?
He very nearly got into both of my first 2 teams of the week. He was a pretty fantastic player. And I don't know where the Italians are going to come in this team because there's so much competition. But as a defender, as a line-out operator, as a try scorer, you can't get much more than Jacopo De Rossi as a hooker. So I think he edges it for me.
No, I'm happy with that. I mean, I actually ended up with his teammate, Ettore Denaro Patricio, in the team of the round in round 3, but only because he came off the bench and scored a hat-trick. Which, you score a hat-trick, you're pretty much getting into the team of the round, but it doesn't necessarily get you into the team of the tournament. And also it was a hat-trick off the tail of a maul, so it's a bit of a team effort, that. So I'm very happy with De Rossi at hooker. I think that reflects it as well. Italy's strength was definitely in that forward pack, wasn't it? They were brilliant there.
Yeah,
let's get De Rossi in there.
We might hear from some more of their pack a little bit later on, but he was really impressive.
Right, who have you got at 1?
So it's an interesting one because, again, in the old Next Gen DMs, we often get some people try and edge in their mates or maybe mention a few of their friends who are taken to the field. But I got told to watch out for Harry Goslin from Belvedere College in Leinster. And in the first round, he was excellent. In the second round, even better, made it into the team of the round. And he's captained Ireland as well from the front row, which is, I think you get a lot of skippers from the front row, but you don't get a lot of them playing it at tight head. So Harry Goslin was great. And I think he slips in there, not necessarily unopposed, because there were some really impressive players in that front row, but he was pretty great at tight head. I don't know what your thoughts are on that position.
Yeah, I'm happy with Goslin. I thought both of the French tight heads were excellent. I thought the England scrum was really good as well. But I'm happy with Goslin. I think Ireland had a good tournament actually. And a lot of that was anchored on some of that leadership up front. So Goslin in at tight head. On the other side, we had there's an argument for players from Georgia here, for players from Spain, any number of the England loose heads. But I would like to find a place in this team for Gorlecki.
It's interesting you say that. This is a really tough one because if we're locking in Goslin, which I think he was a really talented player, Gorlecki was great, played all over the park, Navarrete was it in the front row for Spain, who was pretty excellent. Um, Zach Price, the Frenchman, who is I don't know exactly how French he is, but really good in the second and third round, especially. Yeah, it's a difficult position to pick. Um, but Guleko was great. Started the first round in the front row, played the second round at hooker, played again freely in the third round. That was a tough game against France, and I think that you've got to be pretty physical up front.
Mm.
And I think that, yeah, I mean, to be fair, Will Knight as well, also in the front row,
Yeah,
pretty outstanding. But yeah, I think Gorleko does deserve a place in the team. Um,
let's go with it then. Gorleku.
yeah,
Three
again,
nations, and
very
we're off and
easy.
running.
A great hack, Gorleko, because he can play all three positions in the front row. Um,
Ideal.
Again, that is a very strong front row.
Right, second row. For
Mm.
me, there is one player here that absolutely stood out every time I watched him, and that's Kai Jones of Wales. Um,
Mm.
he was just a beast. He brought back the choke tackle, thought that had disappeared out of the game, single-handedly decided that he was bringing it back. Um, just always made yards, really impressed me. But I'm open to options. Not least, I've got one lock there, and then I'm feeling like the second space is wide open. Where are your thoughts?
So I think Kai Jones was pretty excellent throughout the competition. Um, there were some really good second rows in this in the competition. I mean, England's second rows were great. Laidlaw was fantastic. Um, Scotland's best player in the whole competition was at second row. He jumped down from the under 20s to take part in the tournament and was an absolute monster. Also captained the side. Um, so again, like there's a lot of options for who you could go for. I want to talk about about Spain. Sorry, it was Christian Lindsay I was just talking about there as well for Scotland, who was pretty excellent. The Loretto lock. Um, Spain had a great tournament.
Mm.
The best moment, maybe for me in the tournament, was against England, where both their second rows got on the score sheet pretty throughout the game, which was pretty amazing. And they are a really lovely little partnership. And as you can see, they both got into the team of the round two, because I just couldn't separate them really. Um,
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to put pressure on then, because if I've got Kai Jones in as a he's in, you can have one of your Spaniards. Which one do you want?
so Mark Miska um, is playing for, I believe, Northampton in the UK, and he wasn't listed on Spain's original team sheet, but he came in for that second game against England and was pretty remarkable. Um, and I think another part of his game that I just really loved was when he made it into that team of the week. The reaction online around him was really quite special. But Markel Odriozola was nailed on in that second row, and he played there at every point for Spain and was a pretty hard-working operator, strong in the line out. So I think Odriozola I'd probably put in for Spain in the number 5 shirt.
Alrighty. Jones and Odriozola in the second row. Right, back row. Um, let's do this as a trio before we start running out of time. So let's do this. Let's do this as a three. Who are your three?
Cerrig Smith of Wales
Yep,
go in.
brilliant.
Uh, at number 8, France's captain is also probably going to go into this because he was pretty outstanding. Lilian Barre
Yeah, he
throughout.
was just brilliant, wasn't he?
And then the 7 shirt for me is a little bit harder to put together, because I think there was some really impressive players across the tournament. What do you think at number 7?
Yeah, it's a hard one to narrow down, isn't it? Even just picking the team of the round in round three, I was looking at basically every team had a seven that I was going, yeah, he's kind of should be in the team. Um, Jack Lewis of England, he's been impressive all year. He was impressive in the tournament. Might be tempted to lean the way of him, but there's some options out there, isn't there? I think I'm tempted to lean towards Lewis.
See, I think Jack Lewis was an excellent player, but I think that Elliot Williams, Harlequins and Gordon's and the England captain was pretty unlucky not to get a shout of team of the tournament throughout the competition. Um, so if we're
He
going to put,
was, but Williams is a sort of six/lock, isn't he? So if we've got Williams in the back row, we've got to play him at six.
yeah,
Do we think Smith can
right.
do a job at seven?
Well, what about Matthew Branch Holland for England, who's a number eight? Would you be annoyed at moving him into the seven shirt?
No, I could handle that.
Because
Um,
I think it's pretty impressive. Because Marsh for England is a serious talented. The Denston Leicester number eight,
mm.
and yet in that first game, Branch Holland came on, did really well. In the second game, he threw himself into it at number eight in what was a pretty s- tough day for England, but a strong performance, and then also a pretty crucial try against France to eventually complete the turnaround.
All right. Well, here's the option. Barry, I think is it just plays at eight.
Yeah.
I just don't think anyone, despite some brilliant performances, I just don't think anyone possibly in the entire pack got close to his level. So then it's either Smith of Wales at six with Branch Holland at seven, or if we think Smith can switch across, Williams of England at six and Smith of Wales at seven.
I think I'm going to give it to Branch Holland. I think that Williams gets a lot of chat. I think we all know how talented he is, and I've certainly been banging on about how he's one of the most nailed on looking professional players at this age group. But Branch Holland was great, and also, Branch Holland and Zach Finch both being club mates in the England team as well is pretty great. And I think I'd love to shine a light on that. Yeah, I'm going to give Matthew Branch Holland a spot because Carrick Smith, I think he has to stay at his six as one of the player of the tournament nominations.
Yeah, I'm all right with that. Other than one thing, which is that Elliot Williams is probably in with a shout of player of the tournament as well. And can we have a player of the tournament nominee not in the team?
I actually think we can. Yeah, I think we could do it.
Or
Just because I think Carrick Smith has to play six.
just a thought, because he can play second row. Do we slide Williams into the second row?
Oh, but I can't. I've got to have some Spanish rep. They had too good a tournament to leave them out of the pack, and I think Williams is just going to miss out, which seems a bit silly. But yeah, I think if we want just for the balance of the team, it's going to be Branch Holland over Williams in that back row.
Yeah, all right. I'm sold. Let's go with
There
it.
will in fact be quite a few English players in the back line, I feel.
I think so. Right, halfbacks. Interestingly for me, no English representation in the halfbacks though, because I think Hutto of France was incredible, and I think Carwyn Leggett-Jones in the final game of the tournament had one of the most mature and excellent fly half performances that I've seen from an under 18 international. He was just outstanding in his general play. He landed, I think it was 7 out of 7 kicks, of which half of them, not that you can have half of 7, but near enough half of them were from the touchline. He was just incredible. So I would actually go Hutto and Leggett-Jones, France and Wales as my halfbacks. But where are you?
I think Luca Woodyatt Wales was great as scrum half. I think Isaac Mears was great, but I think that you're right. Valentin Hutto is nailed on. I think again another player of the tournament nom. He was fantastic. I remember writing up my first team of the round, and I was saying how where are all these nines coming from in France? Why do they have so many? And yeah, I think Leggett Jones is an interesting pick because Wales have got quite a few really impressive distributors.
Mm.
Uh, they're pretty stacked in that team, as I was talking about in the build up to the competition. Uh, but yeah, he was good. I actually put Lloyd Lucas in to the team of the round as well. But Leggett Jones did also play in that game and was pretty impressive. And people were talking about him a lot in the build up to the competition. Carmen Leggett Jones saying how he has a really bright future in the Welsh setup, and I think that yeah, he's sort of shown that quite convincingly in this competition so far. He is a really talented player, um, and I'm pretty happy to leave him in there at fly half.
Oh, fair enough then. Easy job in the halfbacks. It's Leggett Jones and Hutto, France and Wales. Um, Centres. I'm actually I'm all England in the centres. I'm Declan Treacy and Will Knight.
Well, I have Declan Treacy 100% plays in this team. I was really surprised that he didn't really feature too much in the first round of the competition, but in the second game he was fantastic and one of the best players on of the day. Um, and in that final game as well, he was a huge part of that victory over France, which is one of the best games of the competition. So I can't see him not being involved, which is not a shame. But again, he's one of the most hyped players at this age group,
Mm.
which doesn't certainly doesn't make it easier to put him in. But yeah, a really impressive player.
Yeah, so Treacy's a lock at 12. I've obviously got Knight at 13. Knight, who, as soon as this tournament was concluded, was off with the England under 19s, along with a few others actually from the England side. Obviously, Elliot Williams, who we've spoken about, is brilliant captain. I think is a shoe in for a long professional career. But Elliot Williams, Will Knight, James Pater, the fullback, Oscar Talbot, the fly half. I'm sure I'm missing a couple, but they all went off and played England under 19s literally less than a week after the competition finished. And Will Knight, to be honest, without Will Knight, England didn't beat France. His try out of nowhere early on in the game put them in front in a game that they were on the back foot in. And then it was his try from a Declan Treacy sort of speculative hack through that really started the comeback going in that second half. So not just for that performance, but that performance particularly edges things for Will Knight for me. But I'm interested to hear where you are on 13.
I think that 13 was an interesting position throughout the tournament because, again, there wasn't loads of consistency over who was picked, other than because even for England, Victor Warsnip had quite a few minutes
Mm.
position as well.
Oh, I feel for him. He's such a wonderful player, and injuries are just killing him at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. But then, Bobby Colbert from Ireland was pretty outstanding, another Leinster boy. Luca Di Novellis for Italy was very good. And he was a big part of some of the top performances that Italy enjoyed in this competition. They've had a really good competition, a slightly not surprisingly good competition because their youth teams are always fantastic. But yeah, I like Di Novellis of Italy a lot, um, and he made it into the team of the round for the first round, and then very nearly snuck in for the second one as well. Um, so those are my sort of my other pick's probably Colbert or Dean Novellis. But if you're really set on having a sort of England centre partnership, I think Will Knight he's a really impressive player, and he did score probably one of the best tries of the most important tries of the whole
It
tournament.
was certainly a blinder of a try, wasn't it? I mean, I could be persuaded with one of the others. Let's leave 13 open
Mm,
because
mm.
perhaps we each need a card in the back pocket
Yeah,
when the
yeah.
debate hots up in the back three. Um, Back three. So there is one player for me that absolutely needs to be in this team in back three, and that's Junior Denny.
Junior Denny, yeah, Junior Denny was remarkably good in this competition. He was really impressive in the opening two rounds for me, and then obviously to be part of that huge win against France. He's almost the only player to make it into all three team of the rounds. But obviously there was some. I mean, Del Puig in that final round probably kicked him out of the round three team. But yeah, Julie Denny was fantastic, and I mean he's immediately been picked today by England under 17, which
Yeah,
is really special because he's got such a bright future in the game.
yeah, he's
But yeah,
brilliant.
he's pretty complete. Like it wasn't just his running with ball in hand. Like his handling's excellent. His defense was fantastic, and yeah, he's pretty nailed on.
Yeah, so Denny locked in on one wing. The other wing, for me, interested to hear what you think. It comes down to me between two players, Charlie Tamani of England and Del Puech of France, who was excellent. Um, that's probably the choice for me. I might lean towards Del Puech, but I'm open.
Well, I will chuck Lucas Gill from Spain into the running. Um, because again, he was really impressive in that second round against England. And then he scored the winning try, basically against Scotland as well in that final game. And he's not a big lad, Lucas Gill. He's moved from fullback into the wing a few times, but he was really impressive for Spain. And again, I think Spain had such a good tournament, but I also don't want to go this far without picking anyone from Georgia. Um, because Georgia were great uh, in this tournament. I know they made it into the team of the round for round three on the wing, but they were a pretty strong side throughout. They caused a lot of issues. They maybe didn't get as many points on the board as they wanted throughout the tournament, but yeah, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about wing because Tamani I think was great, but I think there are other options that might make it into the team ahead of him.
I think if we want a Georgian in the team, we need to look at somewhere in the pack, probably in the front row. Razmadze potentially.
He was great, but I don't think he shifts any of the ones that we've got in there.
No, but I don't think their back line was where they stood out. So I think if we have a Georgian, they need to be in the pack.
Fair enough.
So then I look at it and I think, well, yeah, it's quite open on that left. Tell you what, we'll leave that left wing a little bit open as well, just for the moment, while we have a look at fullback. Now, for me, the choice really is between two players who never made the team of the round. The French fullback, whose name is escaping me currently, and James Pater of England. Um, Neither of them made a team of the round at any stage, but they, for me, were the two standouts. Sorry?
James Pater got very close to making a couple.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but
do we go with Pater at fullback, or have you got another card up your sleeve?
I've got a third option, which is Andrew Henson from Ireland,
Yeah,
who was very, very good. Um, they had Finn Rosem in there as well, who was pretty excellent. But Andrew Henson in that second round was just absolutely remarkable. He's a great player, and I think that Irish representation is pretty lacking because they did have a pretty good tournament.
yeah.
Um, and his game in the second fixture was actually remarkable. He was probably the best player in the whole of the second round. And then of course he was still part of that win over Georgia, which needed some flash from the back line because they were
It did need some winning that game, didn't it? It certainly did.
absolutely, yeah. And I think that we probably are worth having an Irishman in the back line as well.
Yeah, all right. I can go with Henson at fullback. I will give you that, which means that I'm going to gracefully take Knight at outside centre,
I'll give you that.
which leaves us with the wing. Who do we fancy?
I think it's got to be Del Puig,
Yeah,
the French winger. I think he was pretty remarkable in all three rounds. He could have easily made it into the team of the round for team two as well. Um, after and he could have made it in on team one as well. I just couldn't really leave out either of the England wingers in that game because it was such a big performance over Scotland. I think Charles Semenya was fantastic, but I think that our England rep is pretty strong, even though they were one of the best teams in the competition. I don't want to overbalance the team, and I think he was probably France's best winger, and it was a really high scoring French team.
yeah, I could go with that. he was excellent. I think France's back three is they were excellent throughout. So I feel it would feel odd not to have one of them in there, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
just having a look then at what that means for the team. So I think, well, if we're happy, is that the team locked in? Are you feeling all right about that?
I feel bad not mentioning a Georgian in the team, but I think that if you know the pack has been is a really hotly contested
Yeah, I mean
group.
the pack is just unfortunately for Georgia, there are just so many good players in that pack, isn't there?
And we're very close to not having a Spanish player in the team, which would be a crime because of this huge results that they've had. So I've got to at least keep one of them in. And if we shift around the pack anymore, I think we might lose Odriozola. So I want to keep that how it is.
I mean the only real space we've got because we've fudged it a bit is at seven, with Branch Holland at seven. If there was a player from Georgia that impressed us in the back row particularly, but I tell you the back row was really where they stood out.
I understand that, yeah, and I think that it'll be difficult to stick any of their back row in, even though I think they were good. Especially Shota Grivich was pretty good as a six, but I think that again he's another six, so he doesn't exactly fit what we're trying to put down here. So I think we might have to leave it how it is.
Alrighty then. We leave it how it is, which means our team of the tournament for the men's under 18 Six Nations is Gorleku of England, De Rossi of Italy, Goslin of Ireland, Jones of Wales, Odriozola of Spain, Carrick Smith of Wales, Matthew Branch Holland of England, Barret of France in the pack. Backline Hutto from France, Leggett Jones from Wales, Treacy and Knight from England, Delpeche from France, Denny from England, and Henson from Ireland. Which leaves us actually with, I mean, that balance of nations is actually relatively reflective of the tournament, in that England were definitely the best team and have five players in the
Hmm.
side. France have the next most with three, and given what they did, that's probably about reflective. Ireland and Wales have two each. Wales went through the tournament unbeaten, but probably didn't play the hardest of fixtures. So that feels about right. Ireland about right. Spain and Italy have one each. Yeah, you could make an argument for each of them having more, but in order to do that, you had to take players off someone else. So
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
ends up being fair. Scotland don't have any, and unfortunately for Scotland, they didn't have a great tournament. Although I would like to shout out McAfee again at fullback because that try was just something else.
And they're close in the pack. Lindsay, their captain, was
Yeah, exactly. They had some good moments, some good players, but not quite the team of the tournament players. Georgia are unlucky to miss out, but in a similar way to Scotland, probably their best performances came from players that played in positions that other players were just so standout. So they miss out as well. But those are our teams of the tournament. Right, very quickly, Wilf. Shall we do a player of the tournament for both the women's and the men's?
sure.
Women's
It's slightly easier.
women's well, yeah, it's Psyche, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we could chat about it, but it's her. She was brilliant, by far and away the best player in the tournament. Men's, where do you lean?
Well, I think the question is, do you lean forward or back? And I think if you think that one of the best players of the tournament was a forward, I think it might have to be Carrick Smith from Wales. But if you think the best player was a back, it might have to be Junior Denny from England.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, 'cause I just think that Carrick Smith was genuinely unbelievable for Wales, and this an undefeated run in the Six Nations is pretty impressive for this under 18 side, where I don't think there was that much hype around them coming in. But Junior Denny was amazing, and he performed of all the England players you'd pick out there. I think Treacy's pretty close for a player of the tournament nom as well. But I don't know how much chat there was about Junior Denny coming into the competition, but he was outstanding.
Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to leave it to our listeners, subscribers, etc. We're going to put a vote out on Instagram, and you can vote for your player of the under-18s Men's Six Nations Festival. You can vote for your women's one as well, but if you say anyone other than Psyche, then you're insane. So
Who are we going to put Psyche up against as a women's player of the tournament?
herself, Psyche at 13 and Psyche at 15.
I think that's the right thing to do. Those are the two best players in the tournament. That feels absolutely right.
I can't see any other option. She was absolutely brilliant. Okay, cool. Those are our teams of the tournament. Those are our slightly fudged players of the tournament. But we will we'll leave that to you, the viewers, subscribers, listeners, whatever you are today. Wilf, thanks for joining. Successful pod debut, I'd say. We need to get you back on. And in fact, I can trail a couple of podcasts that are upcoming. We've got Will Roberts returns next week to, you might have heard us do our Lions Cubs starting 15, but after Andy Farrell announces his full Lions squad tomorrow, we'll have an idea of how many numbers he's selected, and we will basically reflect that in a Lions Cubs squad. So 21 and under you've got to be to qualify for that. You also have to have left school is the other criteria. So it's quite a tight window of age, but we're going to be picking that squad. And then Wilf, one for you to mark in the diary at some point. Once every Premiership club has announced their academy intake for the upcoming season, we are going to be running a mock draft.
I have some very strong opinions.
We've realised that first of all there should be a draft, and second of all that doing it as a podcast, as a mock draft, is going to be good fun. So it's going to be every player that has a senior academy contract for next year, who was at school this year, will be in the mock draft. And if that's not a number that is an even split between the teams, then we will give our draft selectors a number of wildcard picks to be able to make up the numbers. And it'll run very much like an NFL or NBA draft. Should be good fun. So that's a diary marker for everyone. And Wilf, you're gonna be involved in that. You don't know it yet, but we're getting you locked in for it. Right. Thanks everyone for listening. You know where to watch, subscribe, listen, etc. And you know it's at NextGen15, at NextGenXV across channels. Wilf, thanks very much for joining. Excellent selections.
Cheers. What a team that is.